A lot of B2B SaaS startups and even software startups tend to waste a lot of resources on marketing. And it's primarily due to having an issue with targeting the right ICP in the first place. Some people don't even have an ICP. The issue isn't usually the product, but it's more so the case that the ICP is built on guesswork, loads of assumptions are made, or you're actually in a different maturity of your business journey and you're not targeting the right ICP anymore. In this episode, we're actually joined by a special guest, Anastassia Laskey, who is the founder and president of Ground Control Research and the creator of Telemetry. We'll show you exactly how to build, test, and fix your ICPs, something that you're working on, but more specifically, using AI-powered research so that you can cut down your sort of validation time, test more effectively, but also build a more robust ICP in the first place. Anastassia has actually helped many of her clients take on building their ICP to a deeper level. So Anna, thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you. How are you doing?
Thank you, Neil. I'm glad to be here and thanks for having me. And I'm just super excited to dig into this topic because, as you know, and now your listeners know, this is what I do all day long is really help businesses make sure that they've set up the right foundation and the right groundworks that they're building their entire business on, which is who's buying from you, and making sure that that's really dialed into something specific and accurate and actionable. So yeah, we're going to really dive into the actionability here today too, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We're super excited too. I'm super excited. I feel like there's a lot that we could unpack here today. And just just when we first connected and talking about ICPs in general, I think it's a foundational piece of the marketing infrastructure. And a lot of people tend to sort of either skip this stage altogether, make a single assumption and move forward. But something like ICP, like could you tell us a bit about give us a bit about background of how you even came to be so involved in this area and why it's so important to you?
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, my I come from the world of startups, right? And specifically like growth stage startups, but early growth stage startups. So if you were to equate this to like a venture model, maybe like late series A, early series B, maybe like a series C type of a startup. And I think that in that world and in that environment, the prevailing attitude, which I agree with, is like, let's go, let's do stuff. Like, let's test,
Yeah.
let's iterate, let's put stuff out there. Let's go, let's go, let's go. The way my mind always has worked, and this just sort of came out of me organically, in my early career, being in those startups, being in marketing roles, being in analytics roles, is I'm kind of lazy. So if we're going to like hurry up and go, I want to make sure that one, that effort works. And number two, that I used as little energy and effort as I possibly had to get to the result. So when I actually started, helping marketers do marketing better, I found out very quickly that a lot of the time wastage, money wastage, energy wastage is because we're moving way too fast on the wrong part of the project, if you will.
Yeah.
So the foundational piece of who is our customer, what matters to them, generally, people are kind of putting like, oh, it's generally this, or they're just sort of specifying it and moving on. And they're not really spending enough time and energy going deep in validation into that. And they're not really getting to the level of precision that they need to get the disruptive result in their marketing. So then we're getting like
Yeah.
weak results, flat results. We don't know why the results are the results that they are. We're speculating, we're doing random like ideation on campaigns and just like, could we do another campaign or should we try another channel? And all of that symptom is coming from not spending enough time and energy and really being effective actually in mapping out who is your ICP, what matters to them, what's the deal path. And again, we can get into all of this, but really putting all of this down in a thoughtful way for the product that you're trying to sell, and then validating it before you just start spending against it or just marshaling an entire team around, some campaigns.
Yeah. I think actually I'm a culprit myself of moving too fast, being a growth marketer, just working on the various projects we've been working on. I found myself that although I am an advocate for moving fast, moving lean, I have noticed that even I've dug myself a hole, right? When even going forward with an ICP, that sort of thing, we're like, hey, okay, let's test out some messaging. We've got some ad dollars, that sort of thing. Let's go and pit
Mhm.
these two audiences against each other. Let's see which one responds better. I think I'm definitely a culprit of that, so I don't understand, and I do think we need to slow down.
Yeah.
But I have seen the impact of slowing down and getting them right, because we could have saved ourselves some ad dollars in the past, right?
Yeah.
We could save ourselves some resources, and I think that ultimately that's why we're here, so we can get it right as much as we can the first time, or get enough of it done so that we can create that well-defined ICP, which we'll go into, right?
Mhm.
So for everyone listening, that's something, a bit of insight into what we're going to be talking about, is that complete ICP methodology, sorry, and creating that, and how we can actually use AI to optimize that whole process and get that done a lot sooner. And that's why Anna's here. She's done this plenty of times, and been successful with it. So we're here for those, to glean those insights as well. Um, but what can you think in terms of, from a marketing level, and let's say a sales level as well, right? So that
Mhm.
revenue generation side of
Mhm.
things. What's the most valuable insight you think you can provide in terms of, if they get this done right, what can they sort of expect?
There's three things that I think B2B companies need to be very precise on. And like, I don't mean accurate, I mean precise, right? So accuracy is I'm generally right. Precise is like I've got the exact grain of sand I wanted out of the beach, right? They need
Yeah.
to be precise on three things. They're often very accurate. And that's usually when I come in to work with a client. They're not like way off, right? They're accurate, but they're not precise. The three things are: one, what is your ICP, your ideal client profile? So this is the company level definition of who it is that you serve with your product, service, whatever it is you're selling. Number two is the buyer persona. Oftentimes I see like businesses almost conflate the ICP with the buyer personas, and they sort of say, well, it's, my ICP is like a person at a company, and that's not actually like how we want to think about that. And there's some real strategic reasons we don't want to think about B2B that way. But let's get clear on who at that type of company. And one, you can't define the persona until you've defined that company type precisely. That's another thing that we need to watch out for. So that's number two. And then number three is the deal path. So another huge, huge, huge mistake that businesses make, and I see this all the time, is they rely on salespeople to sort of inform their marketing, maybe a little bit too much, or they allow their marketers to inform the sales like strategy a little bit too much. And that's all related to this thing called deal path. The deal path means, in a business, who are you initially getting on the phone or initially interacting with? Who are you interacting with next? Who has to approve this service or this product that you're selling? And who's really involved at that organization with the decision to, engage or form a relationship with your company? Oftentimes, I see businesses really struggle to know what that is, or they're using assumption of like what came out of some sales calls as representative of a broader market that they don't really understand well, and therefore they're saying the wrong thing at the wrong time in their funnel, essentially, and that leads to a lot of leads falling out of the funnel, even if they're targeting the right market.
Yeah, I've noticed this too. Actually, I actually had a conversation about this earlier in my workday. So, and guess what happened? We were talking to sales about what they thought, and so there you go, right? So it's a clear, quick example of it happening. Still, it happens often, and it will continue to, because sales are actually close to the prospects. They're close to the customers too. So who else do we lean on if we can't get direct access to that?
Right.
Especially as marketers. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do see it as part of the funnel overall. Whether you look at it as a funnel, whether you look at it as a flywheel, as HubSpot tell us to do, um, there is the idea that, not even the idea, it's, I think, a fact that every time you do get the ICP, or you nail the ICPs, and you get that sort of, you get the precision that
Hmm.
you need from the in that entire process, your pipeline conversion rate skyrocket, right? Because you're moving the right people across down the funnel, and you're moving the people that are more appropriate with the problem that you're trying to solve down the funnel, and you're actually helping them. So you know that those more valuable people are going to convert. But yet, I don't know if you found this as well, most founders, or even senior marketers, tend to at these B2B startups tend to set it and forget it, right? It's a one-time exercise for them, and then they never revisit it. Have you seen that as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, my observation is that there's sort of a disconnect in a lot of organizations and in a lot of, whether they're founders or senior marketers, whoever's leading that function. Like there's a disconnect between like having this defined, almost like a home, like a schoolwork thing, where it's like we have to have this defined, and then like how do we actually use this, or what they don't see it as actionable, or they don't maybe know how to apply it in an ongoing, constant basis throughout their organization. And that's the problem we're trying to solve with, like in my work with clients, I'm trying to solve that with
Yeah.
their organization as well, because you don't want this foundational ICP work, this sort of foundational customer discovery work, customer listening, whatever you want to call it. You don't want that to sit on a shelf, but often it does. And so that's where it almost is like it doesn't get used, or it gets applied, and they put together a really beautiful presentation for senior leadership about, this is our strategy and this is what we're going to do. And then you see 3 months later, 6 months later, random campaigns that are not targeted, or these experiments that don't seem to align with that strategy work that was done. Also, you might see, Neil, the market changing, and you might see that business not being able to keep up, or they say, oh, well, I don't know why, my funnel, my flywheel fell apart and I'm not getting the sales I used to get. They don't seem to connect that to the pretty obvious activity to me, right? Like from where I sit, the most obvious activity to do when you don't know why something's happening is to find out from your customers what is changing, right? Whether that's at individual customers or the market itself. And things in business, I think historically, software businesses, startups, like have always felt like, business doesn't change as much, or like they're pretty savvy because they're business people, so they're on top of it.
Yeah.
Things change like crazy now. Things change faster than you would ever believe. And I think that's true for consumer too. But for B2B, I don't think folks have the luxury that they used to have of maybe seeing this as like an every couple of years type of a thing. We pull off the shelf, we redo our strategy, like we update it, we update our ICP, and then we move on. I think this has to be something you're doing, monthly, quarterly, annually, but you need to do it in a way that is the right size and the right shape and the right technique for, your stage of company and your goals.
Yeah, it's a bit like this, the old school. I'd say the old school, but it's still very current. The SWOT analysis, right? That you have to sort of carry out at the very beginning of for any process, any campaign, that sort of thing. It's important to visit it. I always am an advocate of going back to the ICPs on a quarterly basis if you can, right? You should, but if you can't for whatever reason, try to at least do it multiple times a year, please. But there's for the more technical founders, just a bit of background is the ICP is not just for what it stands for, the ideal customer profile, but it's more so how it's got a lot more depth to that, right? It impacts the channel selection that we have for marketing. You really need to understand where to market and how to market based off of what you define in the first place. And I think Anna, to be frank, you can't skip this, right? That's just what we're saying. Yeah, you can't skip this.
You could skip it, and then you'll spend a lot of money going out of business. And I think something you're bringing up, Neil, it's really important distinction for folks to have. There's your definition of your ICP. So the definition being, I sell to, accounting firms that are of a certain size or type, right? That's like an example of an ICP. But what's important also is not just the definition being precise, but the details about that type of company being very, very precise and very, very deep. You want to know the language that accountants use. If we use this example, you want to know how do accountants actually talk about the problem that you solve in their own words, because that's the messaging you need to be using, not how you as an expert in developing a technical solution talk about your thing, because they don't care about that, right? Ultimately, same with the problem that the ICP has. If you're not sure on the detail of one, what do they see as the problem? And two, how do they talk about that problem, you're not going to get through to them. You might have the world's best product, but you're not actually going to stand out. And so when we talk about defining, like when we talk about validating an ICP or selecting an ICP, in my world, we're really talking about doing two things. We're talking about making sure that definition is clear, but then making sure that there's a lot of detail that underlies it that leads you to be able to select the right channels, to select the right messaging, to select the right strategies, and to build marketing in a way that's very, very aligned to the behavior that someone else, as in another market, is already doing.
Yeah, I agree. It's that one with the I know that with the accountancy example as well. It's about, hey, if I've got this software and we need to really like integrate it, let's say, the person kind of wants to know whether they can integrate it opposed to how to integrate it, right? They're
Right.
not ready for that yet. So
Hmm.
if you're speaking to the right person, maybe IT, that's a separate ICP, but that's
Right.
where you might want to go into more detail. But I
Yeah.
think to your point earlier, it does feed into positioning, go to market strategy, and the more effective, the more precise your ICP is, your go to market strategy and the positioning layer is going to be way more effective, right?
Hmm.
Um, and you've probably seen this loads as well. But that whole, but our solution needs to, we can help everyone, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. Do you
Yeah.
think that that's why there's so many? There's like a massive bleed, right, in terms of startups failing. There's loads of
Mhm.
startups failing, that sort of thing. Do you think that's probably one of the main reasons why they could be doing this? Like they could be failing because of that. Let's just target everyone.
Yeah, I think it's two things. I don't know that it's like a conscious like we should target everyone, but I think it
Yeah.
is because of the it's like an insidiousness of not getting the precision that you need on who you're targeting, right? And not knowing. I think a lot of um like when I work with clients, a number like one of the first questions I get asked in my workshops is, so this is what we have already. Like, is it precise enough? Like you always talk about precision, Anna. Like, is this one good enough? Like they don't necessarily know what does a like a fully dialed in precise ICP definition look like. And so they may
Yeah.
be thinking it's precise and they may be thinking it's dialed in, but in reality it is too broad or it's too generic. And then the other thing that I think is equal if not more the issue is that startups or organizations may have an ICP that's defined. It may be precise enough, but they're not getting that level of depth and understanding of it, and they're not like connecting it to the positioning and messaging. Like most startups that I see that don't do well are in their own echo chamber. They're talking about how great they are, and maybe they're saying, accountants, just so you know, I have this really great solution, but it's not landing with accountants because accountants don't think that way, talk that way, understand that they don't have that problem according to them, right? And
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
disconnect that leads to kind of market failure, even if the product is a really good product.
Yeah. And there's an element of being at the right place at the right time with the right message as well, right? With that,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
if you have it right, I know just quick example was when working with a client, first thing we did was some ICP work, right?
Mhm.
Because it was fairly weak, and it's up to every marketer should know what the ICP is, and actually learn it. But one thing I knew straight away was upon auditing the campaigns and things like that, straight away I found that there was a way to save like 100, like it was like $196,000 just off
Mhm.
ad spend that was like completely gone in the past, and you're able to recoup that back because I was like, hey, just switch this off. This, you're targeting the wrong person. It was in robotics, but it was more so like targeting the engineer itself. But they weren't selling to the engineer. They were just there to test the solution, but they weren't selling to the engineer. They weren't. It was the motivations weren't right with that person. So I was like, hey, just switch this off and deploy that budget to the right ICP, which would be the people who are 2 levels up, maybe, who are looking for robotics initiatives. And with these days, as you can imagine, with startups in the B2B area, it's way more expensive to even compete on even an ad dollar level. So why wouldn't you go to market with the right and precise ICP or set of ICPs so that you can collectively orchestrate how to move them down the funnel, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's exactly like sort of what we talked about a little bit earlier in this call. My whole entire reason for getting into this, right? Is like we could save a lot of time and money if we just like pointed this at the right direction, right? Like at the right people and at the right message at the right time. So yeah, that's a great example. And just to like add another example, I have a client that works, they're a B2B SaaS, but they sell to like the public safety sector.
Yeah.
And their founding team and sort of their core set of employees all have public safety experience. So this is actually very helpful because it's like same ICP, whatever. Well, so they were accurate, right? But they weren't maybe so precise. When we looked at sort of what they were saying and what they were doing in comparison to the foundational sort of insights that we gathered in our work with them, we found out that they're saying a couple phrases that they made up that
Yeah.
they, as like thought leaders and like people who know like where the future of public safety is going, like that makes total sense to them, but it doesn't land with the client type that they're selling to, right? So my
Oh,
advice to them is, or was in this time, is like, first of all, we need to narrow your ICP even further. It's not just for any kind of public safety, it's for this subset because they're
subset.
a little bit more mature. They can kind of understand where you're going. They're a little more tech savvy, right? Like they're a little more apt to buy. And then two, stop saying this phrase that you made up that makes no sense, like to these people, right? And obviously I'm saying that to my client in a very like, thoughtful way and connecting it
Yeah.
to sort of their bigger goals. But those are the exact types of things that I think startups and specifically B2B SaaS, like they assume that the market that they're serving just gets what they're saying because they're saying it to a market. And those are the things that we really need to make sure you're pointing the right, like your ad dollars or ad spend is being pointed in the right direction. So yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? Like, so I think to make it like super practical as well,
Mhm.
I think let's
Mhm.
talk. Maybe
Yeah.
should we start
Yeah.
talking a bit about the process? I know that you've got a
Yeah.
specific process you follow,
Yeah.
and you've developed as well on back end as part of your offering.
Mhm.
Um, but this ICP, like the life cycle of developing one,
Mhm.
right? We know that it's a never set and forget, but how do we start today, right?
Yeah.
And if we do have weak ones, how do we
Mhm.
fix it? I think let's go into that sort of detail.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Yeah, so the high level of what you need to do again, and I
mm,
think people make it's almost like intimidating because you're like, what do I do? So I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. First of all, get a piece of paper or a computer paper, like open up a notes app, something, some place to document this and write down the definition of what type of company that you serve. Do not write anything in that section of your document about the person. Just write about the company. Write down how big are they? Write down how much do they make? What industry or industries, and you need to look at, are you working with a vertical or like an industry? Are you focused on that? Or are you more focused across some related industries? And don't just pick random ones because then it's going to stand out to anyone. But like, are you focused in related industries around a commonly shared problem or a commonly shared experience that they have?
mhm.
Write down, what is the best type of company for me to serve with my product? Why did I create this thing in the first place? Right? So write that down. Then I would go and I would validate that. Now that we have AI, we have some good things on our hands, right? We can go and we can sort of check at a high level, like have your favorite tool, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you use, have it tell you about this and like tell it, this is who I think my ideal client profile is. Give me 5 different ideal client profiles that I also might want to consider pursuing, right? That's just going to spark some ideas for you and it's going to make you use your human reasoning. It's going to be a lot better than an AI, but again, you're getting the foundation, you're getting some intake in information to use here. To think through, like, should it be different? Should it be the same? Should it be different? Why not? Right. And this is where
Yeah.
you can be a really good strategist. Then I would say the next step for folks is one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to all make sense and you're going to go, oh, I got my ICP. I got it. This makes sense, what we're doing. Or it's going to be like, well, it could be this, or it could be that, or it could be this, or it could be that. And then everyone's going to spiral into 5,000 things. Don't spiral. Instead, figure out, how could I have a conversation with a past customer, current customer, if you're actually generating customers right now. How could I have a conversation with someone who's a member of one of these potential markets I'm exploring and actually ask them, let me do that this week, right? Like, let me have a conversation to really understand sort of their journey. And what problem were they solving? Like, why do they work with me? Like all this stuff, right? And that will give you the clarity that you need to select your ICP. So that's step 1, is selecting your ICP.
I think what's also good is if you have a CS team, they could also. I know a lot of people. You probably found this as well, but there's a lot of businesses out there probably like, hey, no, you can't really talk to the customer, that sort of thing. Well, you why don't you get invited to a call? You don't have to set this up with yourself one-to-one or anything like that, but you can do it with CS, right? You can get onto the calls with CS. And I guess what I'm trying to say, Anna, is like there are ways around to collect data and collect context and collect conversations, right? So that you can
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
these things noted, right?
Yeah. And I think like, this is the number when I coach like my young founders, like the solopreneurs or the ones who are just getting started, right? The
Yeah.
number one thing they're telling me is like, well, but I don't know how do I talk to these people, get them on the phone? And I'm like, okay, well, like kind of think of it like dating. You know what I mean? How would you date someone that you want? Like, how would you meet someone that you wanted to date, right? You would like hang out where they are, or you would like do something relevant, right? So it's the same thing. You can find people on LinkedIn. You can find people through, if you truly do not have any sort of personal connection to this market that you're considering, there are services that you can pay a few $100s to have a 45-minute or a 1-hour conversation with, someone in this ICP. So I think people often have internal emotional like fear of rejection, which I get it. I have that same thing, right? So the fear of rejection is actually what's stopping them from doing this activity, and they're making it into a much bigger thing in their head than it is in reality. Like if you can separate yourself from the fear of not getting the right information, or the fears of like, well, what if I can't get on the phone or whatever, like you'll be able to just move forward.
Yeah, it's about thinking about the end result before you've even taken the first step of even trying to do anything about it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's just have 3 conversations, right? Like, can we have 3 30-minute conversations this week? Probably.
So let's say I did that.
Uh-huh.
Let's say I did that today, Anna, and I went
Mhm.
through like 5 of my clients, and I got let's say a spreadsheet full of nice quotes or talking points,
Yeah.
and I was really smart about it. So I used something like Granola or something like that with the permission of my
Mhm.
customers or
Mhm.
prospects to sort of note take in the background for me whilst I have a very candid conversation. What do
Mhm.
we do next?
Yes. So the next step is to, one, figure out who your and I promise this is going to make sense, but you want to look at the calls that you had and make sure, did I talk to people who now I understand to be a buyer persona or not? Because maybe you went into this thinking I should sell to founders, and you talked to a bunch of founders, but as you talked to them, you heard that they were off in la la land thinking about something else, and you actually now think you should talk to, CTOs at the same kind of company, right? So first of all, let's make sure that we're talking to the right people in those conversations. They're still useful, but the goal is to draft out now a buyer persona, and to say, at these kinds of companies, this is who I should be marketing to and I should be selling to. Once we've got that hypothesis written, or we feel like it really confident in it, then you want to take all of the data you gathered. So these call transcripts, you don't want the summary that like Granola or Otter or whatever tool
Of
gives you,
course.
because
Yeah.
you want the actual language of the customer. But you can use AI tools to help you. And again, I'm not talking about anything fancy. It's just like your regular ChatGPT Pro, Claude, whatever. Like you can go through it. And the key phrase, folks, is use quotes from these transcripts and cite your source. So that way it's not giving you hallucinated, quotes. It's
Yeah.
giving you cited, like you can actually see where in the transcript did that come from, right?
Yeah. And I think
Yeah, go ahead.
also, sorry, just to add that before anyone, Anna's here saying like you could put it into AI tools, you can do. But even the tools themselves, there's no need to like frantically, you know, scramble to see which tool is best or which tool you should
Yeah.
use. They're all
Yeah.
pretty good when you're doing an exercise like this because you're giving it a certain subset of information,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And the thing is, like, people often focus a little bit too much on perfecting the process versus perfecting the outputs when it comes to this type of work. Like I said, my whole point of view is you have to be really precise. You as a human are going to do a lot of the work. The AI is just aiding your workflow, right? So
Yeah.
you don't need to like over engineer some really complicated, prompt or some really complicated thing. What's really important is that you ask the right questions in the conversation that you had, right? What's really important is that you talk to the right type of company and the right type of person at that company. Those are the things that are actually going to deliver the result more so than, am I using, ChatGPT 4.0 or like, ChatGPT 4.5 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. And I think one thing that we could probably say as well here is the idea of like, even if you already have an ICP, does the process change, or do we simply redo the same process?
Yeah, so this act of customer listening, right, where you're going to the market and you're listening to the market, to me, this should be a continuous business process that's a strategic process a company is going through on a constant basis. And I don't mean constant, like every single day, everyone has to call a customer. That's not what I mean, right?
Yeah.
But like this can feed so many different avenues in an organization, right? It feeds product development, it feeds marketing development, it feeds sales development, it feeds bigger picture strategy development. It gives you all of the foundations and the fodder and the content to generate really great campaigns, to do really amazing things as an organization, to make sure your entire team understands what matters to customers, right? No matter what department someone works in, they understand sort of what matters to customers in the here and now. So I think organizations really need to focus on building that. And the best way to start building that is to build it around what marketing needs, because marketing is obviously going to need it more, and then extend that to sales. But I like to see organizations, and what I work with them to build towards is a rhythm of, how many calls per month are we doing with customers, and what are those calls about, and sort of who in the organization is going to use the results of those calls. And all of that being said, like I think times have changed. Like companies don't necessarily have to hire, a full-time market researcher for B2B
No.
that, works at their organization. I think this can be a process that's distributed across, a few key people and key contributors in the organization that help champion it and lead it along. But it's something that can kind of live on without like deep expertise, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And for those founders that are more technical but need that sort of help as well, I think you can always go to like your customer success teams as well and account managers, because they are really close to the customer, and go in with them, right? So there's no crime to leverage those close connected customer facing teams to do any of this work. And I think that's the reason why we talked about this earlier, that ICPs also change from time to time and need to be revisited, is because your business grows, your business changes its priorities, you go into different markets, so your maturity level goes up for certain markets, and you're new to certain markets, right? But I think that there's that whole cycle of founders being stuck in that one area. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's just that at one point it just slows your growth, and you might not be targeting the right ICP, or using a very outdated ICP for a different market, which is why you need to continuously go through this exercise, and is saying on a quarterly basis. But in terms of your recommendations, Anna, let's say that they get all this material together. How do you think they best validate these things, right? Aside from speaking to them, they've got these points in order. How do they go about testing these things? Would you say?
Yeah, so I think the initial round of validation is through conversation, because it's truly the fastest and cheapest way to get this done, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't think you need to have 45 calls, right? I think you need to have 3 or 4 calls. I think you need to make sure you're asking the right questions, right? You have to be, if you're biased and you go to everyone and you say, well, what's your opinion on my new messaging, right? Like what did that teach you? That taught you nothing. So, there's some precision in what you're doing, but if you're doing things well, I think that validating your market and validating your initial messaging can come from, and your initial offerings, the way you're presenting things, can come from a few really quick conversations with the market. And then I would move into more of a advertising or marketing sort of validation, right? Like what is some experiment or testing that we could do on either the ICP or the details, right, that we gathered about the ICP, and sometimes both.
Yeah, I've done it. I've done that before. Run the process. We what we did was we just took the ICPs that we from all the data gathering and the analysis portion, making sure that we had some confidence level with those ICPs. And then once you start to segment those marketing messages, we took those to market. And let's say hypothetically we're using LinkedIn ads, we would fire those different types of messages around the same thing, but built specifically. Those were built specifically by the influence of the ICPs we created in the first place. And then the response is what we're trying to assess, right? How
Right.
should we say it like this? Is it in the customer's words at the minute, or is it in our words? Which one works better, right?
Right.
And to this day, we still refine those, right? So
Yeah.
now and then when we evolve, we still go through the exercise, we refine those, and then we take that to market and test it again, right? And see if
Yeah.
that new way is any good, or if that ICP is any good.
Hmm.
So that's a good way. I think I like that you mentioned a low cost way, because a lot of the startups that we're talking about, they want to start low cost. They don't have much budget to spend on marketing and ad dollars and that sort of thing, or advertising partners, that sort of thing. But what you can do is use a more organic approach and
Right.
use AI, right? I mean, I've spoken to AI before. It sounds really sad, but if you speak to AI and actually ask it just questions about the certain market, the ICP, try to dive deeper. Hey, what motivates this person? What do they care about? What's their general goals? What's the next step of their career? You can start to build a very, very, very deep, deep insights based ICP, right?
Mhm.
From the get go, which is important. I don't know if you do that yourself, Anna, to like to have a conversation, to like dive deeper, to understand motivations, things like that. Aside from
Like have the AI pretend to be like a buyer persona
yeah,
at a particular ICP. Yeah, I've done that in the past, and I think it can be very helpful. I think what I like about that is it helps me to get sort of that first pass. Maybe it's accurate, maybe it's not, kind of like thinking going in my brain, and then I want to take that and I want to validate that with a real human for sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and let's say that for whatever reason there might be a bit of a blip in their process, or maybe there's something not quite right.
Mhm.
Um, how do you recommend like startups actually diagnose the problem, right, with those
Oh,
ICPs? Yeah,
like
because
where's
that's
the issue coming from?
yeah, because they may not know, but or they may have feedback from them saying, hey, we're not the right person or something. But
Gotcha. Yeah.
how would you diagnose the problem?
Yeah. So I would work from the sale upwards, right?
Hmm.
In the business. So if we're looking at like, let's just say we're looking at like closed lost deals. Let's just say it that way. We're looking at things that did not close. Um, we should be tracking hopefully what the reason was, but could we go deeper? Could we start by pulling, the last few calls from each of them and really trying to, again, not with a like, oh, what did we do wrong? Like, how could our salespeople be better? Not that. Like,
Yeah.
from a strategic point of view, from a marketing point of view, what's being said there and where is the misalignment coming from, right? The misalignment is either going to come from the expectation that was set for what your product could do was
Hmm.
different than what the product actually does, which that's a messaging issue. And that's fairly common with startups, especially because they're like, oh, if I could just get my ads to work really well to get me leads, good, when in reality, what we want is revenue. So that can be a huge thing that comes up. Or it's the right person, it's the right message, but it's not maybe the right time or moment or problem in the organization, so like the buying signals are weak, like it's not as strong of an urgency around it. That is more of an ICP issue than it is a product message fit issue. So that can be something to kind of try to get a sense for. So if you start there, and then you could even go to like leads, or deals that fell out of the funnel earlier, and you could start to have some conversations and sort of investigate like what made you come to us, but what made you not come to us, and buy from us. You'll hear about, one of the biggest things in the startup world, in the B2B world, is just competitive entrance, right? There can be a new competitor that comes on the scene, and what you were doing was great until someone else did it better. And that can be a reason that people just abandon your company. So those are things that change really quick, and people need to be very aware of. And that's how I would go about sort of diagnosing or investigating that.
Yeah, I've also noticed, and that there are companies out there, let's say new entrants to the market, let's say you had a unique perspective before, that perspective changes because someone else come and said that they do the same exact thing. So then it might be a battle of cost, let's say, but then you almost as a team think to yourself, well, these guys are just copying our message and to the same ICP. So how do you distinguish? How do you differentiate yourselves? And this is exactly why you need to refine the ICP, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
or review the ICP, I should say, on a quarterly basis
Right.
because of that.
Right.
Sounds like a good.
Yeah, and this is why having this customer listening as an ongoing process in your business is so smart, because if you're hearing, oh my gosh, I found out there's a competitor in this whole competitive situation, and you're just reacting, and now you're trying to stand up like, how do I get in touch with the people to learn the things, and now what do I learn, and I've never done it before. That's really stressful, and you're probably not going to be very good at it like the first few times you do it, right? Or like, that's going to be hard. Why wouldn't you already be doing this as an ongoing activity on a monthly, quarterly basis, so that you can, when something comes up, because it always comes up, whether it's a competitor, whether it's a change in regulatory environment, whatever, that you can just be integrating this, and it's a lot more like feeling in control of the situation versus feeling like you're reacting to the situation.
Yeah. And do you have this is actually particularly interesting because one, the process that you've just mentioned, we've not talked about hiring any agencies or external staff at all, right? Which is fantastic so far, meaning you're already saving some money doing that, and you've not deployed any of the marketing budget to do those things. You could probably even you probably would have built your ICP so far to a good level. But using AI, is there other complementary tools or techniques you sort of would recommend for that, or is part of the telemetry
Yeah,
process,
so
right?
that really depends on who you're targeting
Mm-hmm.
as a business. So it depends on the buyer persona and the ICP, like what company they're at. For like startup, like B2B, that if you're targeting like a more prevalent group of professionals, let's just say, like, let's say you're targeting like accountants that work at large accounting firms, or you're targeting software engineers that work at any kind of company that does whatever.
Right.
Those you can actually use like tools like Outset.ai is a tool that you can do sort of like AI. The AI will do the interview for you with like those groups of people, and you just
Mm-hmm.
pay per response. And then in that tool, you can analyze the data, like things like that. Now, is a CFO at a Fortune, 500 company going to sit and listen to an AI ask it questions for, a couple bucks? No, probably not. So if that's again, you have to know who you're talking to. In that case, you wouldn't necessarily use an AI solution to do the calls for you, but you would, or the interviewing for you, if you will, but you would potentially want to use a service like Bridger is my favorite one. They're pretty low cost compared to the competitors, and they can get anyone on the phone for you. These senior executive types, they can get them on the phone for you within a week. Yeah.
Nice. I've never actually heard of Bridges, so I'll check them out.
Yeah.
Thanks. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be pretty useful. I think that is the hardest thing, though, isn't it? It's knowing what to do at the point of creating these, but then how to actually utilize them well. We've talked about that. We talked about how they actually inform you going to market, what channels to pick, and what messages to also define. But I guess if there was like a way of doing this, if you had to, this probably depends, right? Timeline to review these. Is there a specific timeline you feel like they should be aiming for? I know we've mentioned quarter.
To create a validated ICP, or what
Mm.
is that what you mean?
Validated ICP, but also to go back and review these, right? Let's say.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, like, all I can speak to is sort of the work that we do with clients, right? And what we often will do, especially with the earlier stage B2B folks, where they don't have the budget to like invest in like a full service, market research thing or whatever. We do workshops with them. So the sequence that we do is we have our initial workshop, and then it's about a week or two. I always am trying to get them to do it in a week, but they got other things apparently on their calendar. I don't know what could be more important, Neil, but I get
Yeah.
it.
Don't want to grow the
But we
business.
give them like 2 weeks basically to go and do that initial interviewing, and essentially, deliver on the prescription that we give them. And what we do is it's custom to them. It's not going to be exactly the same. It depends on the exact, organization.
Of
And then
course,
we
yeah.
have that sort of analysis and interpretation workshop. And then it's about a week after that we're finalized, right, on what is the ICP and sort of where are they going marketing wise, what's the GDM, like the go to market that's coming out of all of that work. So we're talking 3 weeks, right? We're talking like 3 to 4 weeks, and it could be faster than that. Again, if clients could get people on the phone in a day, like we'd have the workshop the next day, right? Like it's really dependent upon that. So I don't think this initial thing has to take so much time and energy. And again, whatever you're doing is going to be better than what you were doing before, which is nothing, or kind of glossing over this and just spending a bunch of money on marketing and spending a bunch of time and energy on tactics and not really knowing why or what you're doing. So yeah, like 3 weeks on that initial. And then I would think about it more like how many calls per month am I trying to have, right? 2, 3, 4 calls a month, and who in the organization is having those calls. And the really important thing is like, what are the questions that they're asking, right? That's the thing we didn't really get into, but that's the most important thing that we can do to, like my team does, to empower our clients, is like making sure you're asking the right kinds of questions that are going to get you to that precision in the materials, the marketing foundational materials, insights materials you're creating, right?
Yeah. I think that's valid actually. And it's reassuring to hear you say that, because especially the questions piece, I think that's where it falls apart, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm conscious of time here, but I don't know if there's anything you want to if there's anything we missed out, or if we want to leave everyone with something in particular. I think one thing that, like you just mentioned, is that whole what type of questions you should be asking in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about closed questions here. We're talking about how to ask questions to actually get the most out of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, again, in the interest of time, I'll leave you with this. The biggest thing is, do not ask people for their opinion. Please do not go to phone calls with your market and say, what do you think about X, Y, or Z? That's the worst thing you could ever do, because it's a biased question. It's a leading question. And the only answers you're going to get are essentially, there's 2 kinds of people. There's people pleasers and there's contrarians. So you're either going to get someone telling you, yes, I agree, like I love it, right? And they're not actually telling you what you need to know, which is what they really think. Or you're going to get contrarians, people who have an opinion about everything, and they could break apart anything. And they have, they're like, now they're your marketer for your company. And it's like, no, I just wanted you to be a CFO, right?
Yeah.
And tell me about, what you experience every day. So really focus on asking questions that are consistent across interviews that you do, and really focus on asking questions that are about understanding human beings and business operations and business machinations and workings,
Right.
and not about, frankly, your ego about what they think about you or what you're doing or what they're doing wrong. A lot of times we'll go in and say, well, what do you think about this? And it's almost like to try to catch them of like, they don't really know, right?
Yeah.
We don't need to ask any of those kinds of questions.
I feel like we could be talking about ICP. The thing is, people think of it, I know it's the starting point, but that's the thing. I feel like it's almost doing a disservice calling it a point. And there's just so much to unpack
It's
with
the
it, right?
thing. It's the thing, And again, I think for so long, people have focused on tactics and action in marketing over like really laying the right strategic foundation, or they've just done strategy by guesswork. And those 2 things are what undermines a business's success.
Yeah.
Like your understand everything you do as a business should be based, in my opinion, on a deep, deep, deep understanding of a specific group of people. Like that's what you're here to do. You're selling to those people. Like you've got to make sure that's right. So yeah.
Agree. I feel like that's like a whole other conversation as well, talking about what matters to revenue opposed to what's going to matter to vanity, right? Like
Exactly.
at the end of the day.
Oh yeah.
So, but Anna, if for those who need help with their ICP, if they have anyone has any questions, where do they go? How do they connect with you?
For sure. You can go to ana.bio, so ana.bio. And on that little cute site that I made, you will find some links for if you want to just get in touch and talk. If you want to add me on LinkedIn, I'm posting all sorts of interesting things that are helpful for you guys on there. And yeah, you can learn more about my company, Ground Control Research, from ana.bio as well.
And I'll link that for everyone as well in the description and the show notes so that, everyone can get quick access to that link. But Anna, honestly, I feel like we've unpacked a lot, but we've got actionable tips as well, what people can do to even start building their ICPs and how they can use AI to quickly get to an answer or to some degree of nice, I guess, a bit more of high depth
That's right.
ICP
High
build, right?
definition. I love that. That's what we
Yes,
need. Yeah.
high definition ICP that we can build and actually target. But honestly, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for spending the time with us, the hour. Is there anything you want to say before you go?
No, I'm good. Thanks so much for
Yeah,
having me, Neil. It's been a real pleasure, and I'm sure this is the first of many conversations for us.
definitely. There's probably going to be loads of topics, so we'll have you back on the show when we've definitely got another talking point that we really wanted to dive deeper on. I think we actually can make like an ICP series, which would be pretty cool. But no, thank you once again. And for everyone that's listening or watching, if you did like, subscribe, share, so that other people can see or learn exactly how to build their ICPs. Otherwise, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. So take it easy, and we'll see you soon.